It's that time. Welcome to day 39 of reading every single day for the rest of my life. 30 minutes. I'm so excited. I'm so freaking excited. All right. So let's get 30 minutes started right here. We're at page 162, bottom of page 162. And yeah, let's get 30 minutes started. Let's go. Day 39. We are reading The Alien Perspective by David Whitehouse. Let's go. It has been said that Koroboda became the abode of the learned, where scholars came to cultivate poetry, to study the sciences, and be instructed in divinity or the law. It was a necklace strung with inestimable pearls, collected in the ocean of language by her orators and poets. Her robes were made of the banners of science, according to the 17th century writer aimed Abd Muhammad al-Makari. Hitzrithvi of Gundershem wrote that Karbota was overflowing in the seven streams of knowledge. Toledo, with its own library of ancient works, fell from the Moors of Alfonso in 1085, and Corbota and the king and the castle in 1236, and their vast libraries of Arabic translations of Greek classics were made available to the West for the first time. There were books in those two libraries, then in the whole of England and France at the same time. Knowing this, the Italian scholar Gerard of Ceramona went to Toledo, searching for Ptolemy, the ancient Greek mathematician, and found him. Soon he works for Galen, Alhazen, Avicenna, Euclid, Archimedes, Hippocrates, and others were translated into Latin, and such knowledge transformed the medieval outlook. At the beginning of the 12th century, Greek science existed in Arabic. By the century's end, it had been translated into Latin. Such a storehouse of knowledge, held safe during the Dark Ages, changed the development of Western civilization and gave us the world we see today. Of course, history could have been different, and this knowledge might have been lost and the Dark Ages not taken place. But this is what happened. The West was given a time capsule from an ancient race. The Aztec Empire had expanded and flourished and basked in its greatness. Yet that was to change by a new form of conquest. The 500-year empire didn't fall by arms and strategy alone, but by Hernan Cortes and his conquistadors, who were said to be the gods from over the water. To Maxuma they looked like men and had been conquered men before. But this time there was something different, like the Neanderthal encounter tens of thousands of years ago. There were thousands of years before, there were a strangeness, and some of them were mounted on curious beasts. As these conquerors and slaughtered royal cities and made alliances with his enemies, diplomacy was the best option, at least at first. He met them near the great temple of Tenochtitlan, the symbolic heart of the empire, and invited Cortes to stay in the royal palace. But when Cortes was briefly away, his deputy took Maxuma hostage. When Cortes returned, the people rebelled against the Spanish in Moctezuma, who was probably killed by his own side. The Spanish were chased out of Tenochtitlan, but they were returned a year later with reinforcements prepared to take the city by violence. They found it had been ravaged by smallpox. Soon, Mexico's population fell to just 10% of what it was. What happened to the Aztecs is often cited as the fate of the encounter with a more advanced society, but it is not as simple as that. The real destroyer was known to the Aztecs and Spaniards alike. Thousands of years ago, modern humans invaded with new ideas, and the conquistadors brought disease. In 1960, The Brookings Institution studied first contact for NASA and made the following assessment. Anthropological damn. Anthropological files contain many examples of science societies, sure of their place in the universe, which have disintegrated when they have had the associated with previously unfamiliar societies, espousing different ideas in different ways, different life ways. Others that survived such an experience usually did so by paying the price of changes in values and attitudes and behaviors. On such contact, Carl Sagan wrote in 1973, "The cultural shock from the content of the message is likely, in the short run, to be small." Later, he changed his mind, saying there's a significant potential for cultural shock. Undoubtedly, many will be shocked by the news of the existence of aliens. We have already considered the Neanderthals and the Aztecs. They were two advanced societies, each master in its own domain, but both were to change irrevocably the moment they met outsiders, and both knew that one of them would survive. Is alien contact to be feared or welcomed? In 1976, Frank Drake said that we need not to be afraid of interstellar contact, for unlike the primitive civilizations on Earth, which came into contact with more advanced technological societies, we would not be forced to obey, we would only receive information. Is this a naive view? Is information dangerous on its own? I think it is. Some welcome that others view as a catastrophe. I would like to see our culture merge with the other one, said German astronomer Sebastian von Horner. If there is a galactic culture, a galactic club, then why not join it? We would lose our own present culture, or what we think is a culture, and merge into a larger way of life. This is only the way it should go. Astronomer Paul Horowitz thought that contact would be the greatest event in the history of mankind. Sagan shared that view, that scientific, logical, cultural, and ethical knowledge to be gained by tuning into galactic transmissions may be, in the long run, the most profound single event in the history of civilization. Sagan added, "It is certainly possible in the future of human civilization." That was like the fifth yawn, I think. Was that the fifth yawn? Someone tell me in the comments. Sagan added, "It is certainly possible that the future of human civilization depends on the receipt and decoding of interstellar messages." Arthur C. Clarke. Wait, what? Let me read that again. Sagan added, "It is certainly possible that the future of human civilization depends on the receipt and decoding of interstellar messages." Arthur C. Clarke said it might be the most devastating event in our history. Stephen Jay Gould said it would be cataclysmic. These are dangerous ideas. Some maintain that contact can regenerate societies. Look at what happened to China in the 19th century, they say. Perhaps we would become depressed at the state of our technological backwardness. Frank Drake was more optimistic. Some eminent people say it will be terribly depressing, that we'll feel ignorant, and they protect a planet-wide inferiority complex. My take is that it would have to be the opposite effect. It could motivate us to think that if we worked hard, we could be as good as them, motivate us to make progress much more quickly than we are. We all have to be exposed to minds and accomplish greater than our own, he argued. The result is more often inspiration rather than depression. But how can he be sure? Sagan and Drake thought that contact with aliens would inevitably enrich mankind beyond imagination. Searching for other life in the universe is not an unnecessary luxury, Drake maintained, but an essential component of forging a better life for humankind. Would we gamble the well-being of humanity on such an assumption? It is a narrow debate, usually concentrating on the scenario of slow exchange of radio messages across hundreds of light years with no physical contact, which tends to be the most optimistic scenario. There is a time for the information to be studied and released. The distance mitigates any threat. It's just information. It's the ancient Greeks all over again. In Carl Sagan's Contact, religious fundamentalists oppose communications with aliens so much that it is a suicide bomber destroys so much so that a suicide bomber destroys the alien designed portal. Will some see alien as the devil from deep space and the punishment for our sins? Some believe our civilization will be shaken to the core by the news. Carl June said that finding a far more advanced civilization would leave us without dreams. Others have said it will cause us a fuss for a while, and then given the vastness of space between us, it will fade and we will get on with things as normal. That may be the case for us, but there are some aspects of society that will never be the same. When we find aliens and if we are able to exchange information, I would, at first, not be so interested in their scientific discoveries as much as in what makes them different to us. How did they evolve? What do they look like? How do they organize their society? Do they have morals and a sense of right and wrong? Most of all, do they consider themselves to have souls? Do they have a god? Some religions have seriously considered the implications of finding intelligence in space. Others have worked hard to avoid the issue altogether. The fact is it raises troubling questions that strike at the very foundations of some faiths. The mathematician and theologian Bishop Ernest Barnes said that finding other intelligent beings more advanced than we are would change our self-image as the chosen people of the anthropocentric God. If God only realizes himself within an evolutionary progress, declared Bishop Barnes, then elsewhere he has reached a splendor and fullness of existence to which Earth's evolutionary advance could add nothing. Would the reins be torn from our hands? As psychologist Carl June thought, what if we find aliens, no more intellectual match for superior beings than our pets for us? To find our inspirations outmoded might leave us completely demoralized? Islam may welcome them. The Quran actually mentions life from outer space, and some Muslims have said it is the height of the conceit to suppose that God created the vastness of the universe just for us to enjoy when we will never see the vast majority of it. Buddhists and Hindus, with their philosophy of oneness and unity, will have no problem accepting aliens as a part of cosmic brotherhood of consciousness. It is Christianity that will find it hardest to adapt. There is a particular hard line of Christian thought that will deny aliens, however advanced, wise, and serene they may appear to be, the same status as us. There is a God and the angels who are spiritual beings without form. There are humans who have a soul, and there are animals. Aliens, because they are human, are animals, and therefore do not have the same moral status we have. Some scholars think aliens have souls. The Vatican astronomer Father Guy Cosmologman believe they do. Any entity, no matter how many tentacles it has a soul. He also adds that he, for one, would baptize an alien into the Catholic faith if they asked, implying that once baptized they would be spiritually the same as humans, as all souls are equal before God. Indeed, some say that if we found aliens, it would be the Church's duty to convert them, in the same way the Church traveled to the New World to save heathens. The problem is that mankind and the earth are privileged in Christian theology. Christians have a personal God and a personal relationship with Jesus. They believe that out of the immensity of space and time, God, the creator of everything, has singled out humans to be saved and has sent his Son to redeem us. The question is, therefore, has God done the same for aliens? Opinion is divided. Father Jose Gabriel Funz, the former director of the Vatican Observatory, has stated that in a cosmos with possibly billions of intelligent life forms, only humans have been saved, and that God's Son only came here in a unique and unrepeatable event. Jesus did not suffer on other worlds. However knowledgeable the aliens may be, and however seemingly good and wise they have become, they were not visited by God's Son, who did not die to redeem them. According to Father Funz, for the aliens to have fellowship with God, there would have to be another way. The Catholic commentator Joseph Bragg wrote in 1960 that there can only be one incarnation, one mother of God, and only one race into which God has poured his image and likeness. Some have suggested that God's Son could only have visited other civilizations in space and redeemed them. In 1913, the poet Alice Meynell wandered in the guise Christ trod in Pallades, and asking if there were a million gospels, a million forms of Jesus among the stars. Others strenuously point out that Christianity is Christocentric, not anthropocentric. The theological difficult point is not the existence of aliens, but the right place of such beings in the history of salvation. Christianity will have to adapt or cling to its chosen status and consider aliens as infidels. One day we may converse with an alien, a future pope, and an alien may discuss questions of faith. But before that takes place, the search itself forces us to confront difficult questions about our beliefs. If we are made up in the image and likeness of God, are creatures from the depths of space and who bear us no biological relationship also made in his image? Arthur C. Clarke once wrote that a faith which cannot survive collision with trust is not worth many regrets. Aliens might share some religious concepts with us, such as the existence of a supreme being or the deliberate creation of the universe. Perhaps our concepts of God are a subset of possible views. Any alien religion could not agree with all the diverse religions of Earth, so someone will be annoyed. The Christian Church has lived with the changing times from the Ptolemaic view of the Copernican view. It might be the resistance to change came not from the theologians, but from society as a whole. Great religious leaders take for granted the world view of their time, usually on a very popular level. Christianity survived Copernicanism, Darwinism theory, and Marxism. The adjustment will be less wrenching for Eastern religions that teach salvation through individual enlightenment. If science proves some belief of Buddhism wrong, said the Dalai Lama, then Buddhism will have to change. Religion has had to come to terms with evolution, seeing it as God's work. Is a melding of science and theology feasible? Is melding of science and theology feasible? Is a melding of science and theology feasible? Is a melding of Is a melding of science and theology feasible? Many religious leaders acknowledge the validity of scientific approach, although perhaps not for all questions. If our religions and those of aliens if those of an alien are incompatible, do we have choices other than adopting their beliefs or rejecting them completely? The common ground may not lie in the intellectual heights of theology, but in the practical world of ethics. The way intelligent beings in one society treat their counterparts in another. Would we even know? Would not the very existence of signal from an alien be kept a secret? If there is lots of information received, Frank Drake urges caution. You'd better take a close look at the information to see if it would appear threatening to anyone, and make a judgment as to just what you say. So let's be realistic. Such a signal might not be made public, but then others would want to get in on the act. The information would be valuable. Would it be the most highly classified information in the world? There have been and undoubtedly are many secrets in science. One was over the test detonation of the world's first thermonuclear bomb in 1952. A concern at the time was that the explosion could ignite a runaway chain reaction that could incinerate our atmosphere and all life on Earth. Obviously, that did not happen, but top secret talks had taken place beforehand to assess the risk, and questions of whether the experimental explosion should never be placed in the wider world's hands. Another example was some people's fear that the Large Hadron Collider, the powerful particle accelerator at CERN on the French-Swiss border, which discovered the Higgs boson might accidentally create a black hole that could swallow the Earth from the inside out. That debate was held in the public domain, ending in the courts when judges ruled, having seen the scientific evidence, that the LHC could be turned on the negligible risk of the Earth. There are precedents. In 1967, the U.S. Department of Defense Vela 4 nuclear test monitoring satellite recorded a flash of gamma rays and did not come from a nuclear test. Instead, they came from the opposite direction, from deep space. The data was analyzed in 1969 but not made public until 1973. Astronomers now know them as gamma ray bursters. It's not just the military but academics as well. In 1967, astronomers at Cambridge University detected pulsing radio signals. One of the first thoughts about their origin was that they might be artificial. But instead of calling a press conference, they withheld their results for months. They later said their caution was justified as the signals came from a new type of natural object. In 1995 to 1996, researchers looking at a sample of Martian rock concealed their findings that they might have found traces of a past life. A meteorite picked up from 1984 from the fall western ice field of the Allen Hills region of Antarctica was later identified to be from Mars. Oh, that's interesting. One of a few that have made their way here after being blasted into space by an impact, in its case some 17 million years ago. It was taken to the NASA Johnson Space Center in Texas for analysis. A small number of scientists noticed some things that were strange about this rock. When viewed under a scanning electron microscope, some structures were seen that were hypothesized as being nanobacteria. If confirmed, it would have been the first solid evidence of extraterrestrial life. For over a year, the researchers kept the discovery among themselves, shuffling paperwork and assignments to keep their work away from attention. Eventually, they arranged a meeting with the head of NASA, Dan Goldin. It was scheduled to last less than an hour, but they stayed with him all afternoon. When it was over, Goldin was beaming and apparently hugged the scientist. After they left, he asked the assistant to put up in a call to the vice president. The research was due to be published in the journal Science in August 1996, but leaked a few days before. Looking back, the research is intriguing and still inconclusive, but the case for alien life hasn't been conclusively made. There are some explanations that we need more rocks from Mars to examine, which could get here later this decade via International Sample Return Mission. Any rumor of alien detection would spread rapidly across the internet, no matter how circumspectively the astronomers who found it behaved. They would have to have the signal confirmed by using a different radio telescope, an act that would be known by many, the astronomers themselves, along with their students, but also the observatory's technical and administrative staff as well. No matter what protocols were put into place, finding an alien signal and its verification would rapidly become public news. One astronomer who was involved in searching for alien signals using the Arecibo radio telescope in the 1990s told a story about the finding of a potentially interesting signal that was highlighted for follow-up investigations. It turned out to be interference, but before that was determined, the observatory's control room received a phone call about the suspect signal from a New York Times reporter. In the main, scientists were averse to secrecy about such a topic. One could cynically observe that the first scientist to make an announcement would become world famous and all that would result from it. The competition and the pressure would be intense. The type of scientist is about the worst or best person when it comes to keeping such a thing under wraps. As a former science reporter, I can tell you it was not unusual to receive a phone call from a scientist who was about to embark on a round of SETI observations, just to let me know their direct line in case any of developments. Given the pace of communications in the modern world, a credible detection confirmed by an independent observatory would splash around the globe in moments, followed by a deluge of media demand for quotes and statements. Many news outlets would get the details wrong, but the gist of the story. The possible detection of intelligent life in space would be a sensation and lead news bulletins everywhere. There would be a hastily arranged press conference giving out harsh details and profound quotes. Pressure would amount for recreations and head of governments, the Pope, and the leaders of other religions. As private sources fund more of searches of these days, what happens of those who invest millions of dollars who want to embargo the details of the message? In an adjacent situation, the full contents of the Dead Sea Scrolls were not published until 54 years after their discovery. One can imagine scientific priestholds that decide what the rest of us should know about messages from the skies. We cannot assume that the search for extraterrestrials is immune from the ancient motivations of egoism, power, and greed. Decisions that could affect the welfare of human species might be made by small, non-representative elites. In 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down patents on 2 human genes associated with breast and ovarian cancers, BRCA1 and BRCA2. Justice Clarence Thomas said that DNA is a product of nature and not patent eligible. The decision invalidated patents by a Myriad Genetics, allowing other companies to develop kits for testing that determine what your BRCA genes say about your risk of getting cancer. Damn. This chapter's a little long, guys. Okay. The principle being debated in this case was the idea that natural phenomena, as well as observations of law of nature and abstract ideas, were unpatentable. If they were unpatentable, then many were worried that the world's genetic resources would be known by vast corporations, with scientists feeling that they were always under the cloud of legal action. After the ruling, lawyers were instructed to fight the case and seek to overturn the Supreme Court judgment. What is the incentive for research, they argued, if it's not possible to obtain any commercial benefit from its products? Before the ruling, more than 4,300 human genes had been patented. The interpretations come from a single provision in U.S. law, which stated no implicit or judicially created exceptions to subject matter eligibility, including abstract ideas, laws of nature, or natural phenomenon, shall be used to determine patent eligibility under Section 101, and in all cases establishing or interpreting those exceptions to eligibility are hereby abrogated. The key word here is abrogations, which means the formal nullification of law through an act of Congress, as in Congress overruling the outcomes of the Supreme Court. The ruling basically meant that whatever legal approach the courts used in the past wasn't going to be used anymore. It all goes to show how hard it is to figure out what is an abstract idea, what is the law of nature, and what is meant by natural phenomenon. It also, lawyers tell me, updates the legal definition of the word useful to be eligible for a patent. A discovery invention has to be unidentifiable benefit made possibly only through human intervention. So the question is, who owns the alien message and the information within it? If it is a company or university, they might want to patent this intellectual property. Billionaire entrepreneurs might compete to access to alien ideas and to monopolize its commercial value. The lawyers at least will ask why millions of dollars were invested in SETI if you don't market the information that it discovers. John Lilly wrote in 1961, "If and when interspecies contact is made, it may be that we shall encounter ideas, philosophies, ways, and means not previously conceived by the minds of men. If this is the case, the present program of research will quickly pass from the domain of scientists to that of powerful men and institutions. A lot has been written about how we might compose a message to aliens, and most of all of it is essentially useless. The prime function of a message is to be noticed. The rest is up to interpretation, no matter how much debate goes into how simple it is and any fundamental universal qualities it might have. Some SETI researchers say that we will have lots of time to compose a reply should we receive a message from aliens. Not everyone will agree. Some may want to reply urgently, and then there will probably be a barrage of signals sent into space, and most, if not all, of which will not reach their destination, probably thankfully, In a way, have humanity speak, and many voices may reflect the current state of our civilization. But what would the aliens make of it? Thousands of uncoordinated messages from Earth. Imagine what they would be like. They might be a reply from the Vatican, or from independent mullahs in the Chinese Communist Party, from the Trump Organization, or the Planetary Society. There would be no rational dialogue. Listen, brother, this is the only true message from Earth, might say some messages, or enter our competition now for the chances to send your message to the aliens. The real issue may be whether superior transmitters such as large radio telescopes would be used to send messages. Nearly all of those facilities are funded by governments, depending on the nature of the contact. Policymakers might have an opportunity to make conscious decisions about sending powerful signals from Earth. How do we express our values when we do not agree among ourselves? Do we need to draft an outgoing message in advance of a detection as a way of focusing? I'm going to finish this page. As a way of focusing our thinking, such a message could be revived in an international body that would be decided whether to send it. This exercise would have implications reaching beyond the immediate issue of message content. Perhaps only when we begin composing a message will we begin to understand the range of issues involved in deciding on the content. Building a global consensus on how to represent humankind would have a significant reaching far beyond the immediate issues of contact. Let us move forward and contemplate the future for life in the cosmos, and we begin our new journey with a visit to a new museum, the Museum of Alien Life. Arbitrage is the next chapter. Oh my god. Alright, I'm at page 179. That was day 39 of reading every single day for 30 minutes for the rest of my life. Thank you. Let's go. See you guys in day 40.